Three, two, one.
Hello, you're tuned into WBPULP St. Petersburg 96.3 on your FM dial. Welcome to the Simone Durant Show, where we cover all things hair, health, beauty, and community.
Wow!
Yep, you heard it. This isn't just a show, it's a movement. So turn up the volume and join the conversation. It's time to educate, enlighten, and empower together. Let's dive in. Good morning, St. Pete, and to all of our listeners. Welcome back to another episode of the Simone Durant Show, where we talk all things hair, health, beauty, and community. I'm your host, certified hair loss specialist and restoration expert, and I'm so excited to be here with you all again today. Have y'all ever heard that song? I love God. You don't love God? Yeah, I love. Okay, so anyways, it's like a youngin' type praise song, but it hits so hard just because it says I love God. It's like, you don't know, I love God. You don't love God? Yeah, I love God, because I love God. And I'm so grateful to be in the room. I really am. You guys already know how I do, starting off every conversation with the attitude of gratitude, giving thanks to God, who is the author and the finisher of my life. Thank you to the African People's Education and Defense Fund, led by Chairman Amali Yeshitela. Thank you to Black Power Management, led by President Onazane Yeshitela. Thank you to Uncle DJ Eddie, Florida's best blind DJ. Thank you to my wonderful Beyonce Vaughn, who is the apple of my eye. Thank you to my children, my clients, my mentors, the community, the Simone Durant Show family. Thank you to Black Power Management, the ones in the background making everything happen, the ones who are making sure that we are compliant, making sure that we have a platform to meet you guys each and every week. Radio has been the one thing that is very consistent throughout time. There's been, since the internet, there's been videos and reels and podcasts. And so to be on a platform that has been, since the beginning of time, to be in a space where, it's tried and true, it's still very, humbling to me. Like I said before, I never pictured myself being on the radio, but here I am, and there's some great things that are happening. There's some great conversations that I get to share on the air, and I think a part of that experience is me being transparent. I think a lot of times we get listen to radio, listen to shows, listen to videos and podcasts and, different documentaries, and people are losing the ability to just be themselves, but the younger generation, they're picking up on the need for authenticity, and but sometimes you want that from someone who's a little bit more mature, who is talking about some things that are important to you. And so I think that I straddle the fence. I'm just old enough, but I'm just young enough, and so I get to talk about topics that are relevant and important to everybody, and for that I'm truly honored and blessed. Today is going to be no different. If you guys are tuning in from Facebook Live, you already know what the topic of today is, and for those who are listening, today we are going to be talking about crisis. The word, the meaning, and what that looks like for each and every person that is living in what they may feel like is a crisis right now. And so if you live in America, or if you watch the news, most people would think of a crisis as something that comes to mind and you automatically feel a sense of panic or chaos or fear. But I learned something. I told you guys I was in school, right? So I learned something this past week that completely changed the way I think about crisis. And I wanted to share it with you guys because I think it might change how you see it in your own life too. I have been through a lot of things in my life. As I mentioned, I am working on my human services degree. And with human services, it's kind of like a blend between psychology and sociology. So the mind of people and the actions of people and how you support them along the way. And so growing up, I remember going to, counseling sessions, having mentors, being a part of different programs where community outreach was definitely present. I've been through postpartum depression where I had a counselor who sat with me and helped me work through some of my challenges from healthy families in the past. I've been through emotional and relationship challenges where it was a friend or someone, who connected themselves to me who had been through something very, very similar, and we kind of worked our way out. But I'm here to tell you that crisis is not just about danger. It's also about opportunity. And I want you to stick with me because for the next hour we're going to be breaking down what crisis actually is, how your body responds to it, why people see it as an ending, and why others see it as a beginning. And so most importantly, how to move through crisis, right? When you're in the middle of it, because I know it can be a very, very scary thing, especially when we have been taught to see crisis as the most terrible thing in the world. Most people either don't do anything or they do the wrong thing. So first we're going to start with the basics. We're going to talk about what crisis really is. And most people hear it in the English and they panic. Right? They think disaster. Like I said before, they think something that's gone completely wrong. Everything is falling apart. They don't have any control over the situation. And here's a very interesting and beautiful thing that I learned this week. And it's that the word crisis comes from the Greek word krinein, which is Krinein. And it actually means to decide, right? It means to separate. And so it's not just about the bad something that's happening. It's also about needing to make a decision about what you're going to do moving forward. It's a completely different way of thinking about it, right? Because I mean, it totally blew my mind because I think that words have powers, and when we don't really understand what that word means, it's hard to follow that up with intention. And so yes, the base word, or the origin word of the word crisis means to decide or to separate from something. So when you really think about it, if you're going through a crisis or you're going through a situation, there is a point where you have to make decisions, and there is a point where there is separation. In fact, according to the crisis intervention specialist, a crisis isn't defined by the event itself. It's actually defined by the person's perception of the event, whether they have the resources to cope with the event. Because perspective is so important. At the same event, there could be two people in a room. One person is going to see it as a crisis and feel like they just had a bad day. And the other person, depending on what tools they have to work with, depending on, their socioeconomic background, depending on how they were raised, depending on their belief system, they're going to be thinking, what support, what tools, what systems do I have to get myself out of this situation, right? But it gets even better because in the Chinese, the word for crisis is weiji, which is W-E-I-J-I. W-E-I-J-I. And that word is made up of two different words. One literally means danger, right? And the other one means opportunity. and together they make up the word weje, which means crisis, right? So one person is seeing opportunity, another person is seeing danger, and it really just depends on this, on the choice that you make. And so the Chinese philosophy, crisis literally means danger and opportunity at the same time. It's like saying, that saying that they have about seeing the glass like halfway full, right? So some people are seeing the glass half empty and they're sensing danger. Other people are saying, hey, like there's something missing. What can I look for to fill my cup up and to make sure that I'm able to survive this situation? Now think about it for 1 second. The same event can be seen as a disaster by one person and a turning point by another one. But why, right? Because it's not really about what happened. It's never really about what happened. I have this thing that when I get really, really upset, I'd be like, because it's the principle of the fact of the matter. And this weekend, I was meditating on some things. I was talking to my fiance about some things, and I came to a point to where I realized that in a lot of points where we feel like we're in a crisis, more specifically to the point in case, emotional crisis, right? Relationship crisis. We want to feel like there will be some type of resolve that comes from the situation by way of people feeling like something they're going to say or do or be that's going to make us feel like all that pain made sense, all that heartache made sense, all the time spent made sense, and you somehow get it. But there is no vindication, right? When you are focused on making a decision, right? You can't wait for the situation to make sense. You have to make a decision because your life in most times of a crisis is depending on it. You put yourself in a situation to where you've put yourself out there, or you're out here living life. You have these relationships with people. You're at a job. You're on the road driving, and then something confronts you. An event that makes your heart palpitate. It makes you sweat. It makes you feel like you can't breathe, right? It causes tension in the body. And now your body is in fight or flight mode, and you have a decision to make. And that decision can be based on fear, or it can be based on the opportunity that is in front of you. So according to the research that has been done, there has been concepts called the crisis window. So when someone is in an acute crisis, which means a mild or small crisis, they are actually more open to change than they normally would be, right? Because they're looking for options that are available, good or bad, right? Their old coping strategies aren't working anymore. So they are more willing to try new things, reach out for help or advice, and make different choices. This is like their system is being shocked out of its pattern. And I feel like this is a word because sometimes we feel like we're in a state of crisis and God is trying to like shake us up. He's saying your systems ain't working, your coping mechanisms aren't working. You got to make some different decisions, some different choices. And so we actually should be looking at certain situations in the positive, and I know that that's really, really difficult to do. So the types of crisis that we have, right? We're going to talk about a few of them. Not all crises are the same, and this is really important to realize because you understand that knowing which type of crisis you're dealing with, right, can actually help you to navigate it better and know what help you need to look for. So the first one that we talked about in the textbook, and mind you, anything that I'm talking about, like this is textbook conversation. This is stuff that they are teaching for a degree right now at St. Petersburg College. So the first situation is situational crisis. So this is when something happens, right, to you that you didn't expect and you didn't plan for. You lose your job, you get in a car accident, you have a health scare, a relationship ends suddenly, a loved one dies. It's based on circumstances that hit you out of nowhere and change your life in an instant, right? And we have all been there in some way, shape, or form. Situational crisis can range from moderately difficult to absolutely devastating. I remember the first time I found out I was pregnant, and I was still in college. And I was not trying to call my mom. I remember when my granddad died. I remember when my grandma died. I remember the first time I figured out how to get a brand new car. Like, I remember the first accident that my child had and caused hospitalization. I remember the stress, the long-term stress of going back and forth to school, working and trying to get my cosmetology license with 2 kids. Like, I remember it all. And so some of them can be very, very mild and manageable, and others can be very, very difficult. But we all share an element of having external factors affect us unexpectedly. So, and then there are developmental crises. These are the ones, and I was very interested because when I heard developmental crisis, the first thing that popped into my head was as you develop, as you grow from a child to an adolescent to an adult, But this one is actually, I thought it meant that, but it actually is about major life milestones where you're intentionally or inevitably making a change or a trajectory. So think about things like the rite of passage type stuff, where you're becoming a parent, your child is leaving home, you're having a midlife crisis, you're getting married, you're retiring, you're going back to school. These are all like developmental because they're meant to develop you in some sort of way and kind of show you what you're made of. Sometimes these changes, even as real as they are, can absolutely trigger a crisis. Though we expect them to happen, and even if we want them to happen, we still can enter into a state of crisis, into a state of having to make decisions, having to, not be fearful, sensing danger, approaching these life choices and trying to figure out how to handle them the best way you can. Because even positive changes can still change and destabilize you. They can disrupt our routine and our identity and our sense of who we are unexpectedly. There's so often that God will give people a vision, and I've heard this from a lot of visionaries. I've heard this from a lot of people who have created businesses or been successful in life or are done raising kids or have been to prison or jail, and from a lot of different type of people, people running for office, they'll say like, I had this dream and God showed it to me. And then they're like, okay, I'm going to go get that. I'm going to go chase that dream, right? And then you try and figure out how you're going to get there. And you're like, I don't really know how God's going to do it, right? But I'm committed to the dream. So you going down your, the yellow brick road on your way to destiny. And you're like, oh, this what you doing, God? Like, I wasn't expecting that. Oh, this monkey wrench got thrown in there, and you wanted to build me? Okay. Like, oh, I just lost my best friend. Oh, my child just, and and you're like, wait a minute, like, you showed me something, right? And so these are the crises, these are the points that we are entering into, and they're very, very complex, which leads us to what a complex crisis is. And the definitions that they have in the textbook, like I say, are very, very interesting to me, because A complex crisis is actually one that includes severe trauma, right? So not only are you at a breaking point to make these decisions, but they also include severe trauma, like an assault or experiencing a natural disaster like Katrina that took everything from them, or it's tied to a serious mental illness. So people are living life, they're going through challenges, but they're also suffering from like mental illness, whether it's depression, schizophrenia, OCD, ADHD, anything that affects the mental, right? And then they start going through a crisis, and that is what they call a complex crisis. They call that a complex crisis. So anytime you have a crisis, you have something where you have a major decision to be made, and but you also, on the other hand, can be sensing danger, and now you have to make a decision. And that is a complex crisis once you pair that with mental illness. These
great till they gotta be great. Don't text me, tell it straight to
most times, and sometimes immediately, because it's multi-layered, and people have been trained to kind of like handle these things and to help you navigate these spaces. Sometimes when it's a situational crisis, or it's a developmental crisis, you can kind of handle it. But whenever there's a complex crisis, you kind of need some help, right? If you're in a complex crisis, or you know someone who is, please have them reach out to someone, either in the mental health space, and the crisis intervention space, so that they can help them facilitate the challenges that they are having. 211 is a really great resource that we have, and it's connected to almost every state and city nationwide, that can connect you to the resources that you have in your area when you are suffering from crises. One of the examples that was given, that we had to actually do a reflection on this week, was a grandmother who was giving her grandchildren. She had 2 teenage grandchildren that she had taken over custody of, and she was in jeopardy of losing her house. And we had to basically do a reflection on where the danger was and where the opportunity was. And it was based on a bunch of different things that we studied and we talked about, right? But here is the important part, right? Sometimes we have to realize that we can't handle it alone. And that means, that looks different for a lot of people. If you have a confidant, right, someone that you can talk to, who knows that you know, can keep you level-headed, if there's, you know, a pastor, or, you know, an elder in the church, if you have a best friend, if you have a co-worker, if you have a sister or a brother, or anybody who you can go to, a teacher, who can help you, a parent, who can help you navigate these spaces. It's important to know when you don't need to do it alone, right? The same event might be a crisis for one person, but not for another. Why? Because according to the theory, the cause of crisis is not the event itself. The cause of the crisis is significant to the event, of that event, to the person that is involved. How much does it matter to them, right? So I want us to be kind of like sensitive moving forward, because we're looking at it from a vantage point of, okay, it's not that serious, right? A lot of times we tell ourselves it's not that serious, why they doing all of that? They may be in a state of crisis based on their mental capacity, based on their experiences, based on the coping mechanisms that they have, and it's really hard to put a finger on how someone should handle the situation. However, I do want to put a disclaimer out there, because once somebody chooses to show you the state of mind that they're in, you do have a right to decide whether or not you want to interact with that state of mind. Whether you guys have, you know, whether your relationship has come to an end, whether you guys have learned as much as you're going to learn from each other. If you guys decide, because 2 people cannot walk together unless they agree. So So there has to be a point where you can at least establish a clear vantage point or conversation with these people that you're interacting with for y'all to be on the same page. If y'all can't be on the same page, then they're obviously meant to be in a different space with different people that they can resonate with, that they can listen to, that they can have support from. One of those revelations that I had to realize, and I have to keep realizing, is that I won't be everything to everybody, right? I can't be everything to everybody. And so when we put ourselves in that Superman or Superwoman position, and then a person shows us, hey, like, I don't need you like that, it's a blow. It's a blow. So for those who are listening who say, but I put everything into it, but I gave you all I had, but I was there for you, I was trying to help you, and in many instances you saved them. They would probably be dead. They would probably be in jail. They would probably be, who knows, on drugs. They would probably have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 kids by now. The reality is you saved their life, and you have to have enough peace within yourself. You have to have enough resolve within yourself to understand that there's seasons and reasons for everything that God has us to do. And a part of that crisis that occurs in people like that, right, is that we have to make peace with letting go of our investment, letting go of the things that we no longer need to serve. I know a lot of times we say, oh, like, this no longer serves me, but sometimes it's you no longer need to serve it, right? And so as we talk through this conversation, I don't want to leave y'all out, because I think that there's a big silence, right, around the conversation of the helpers, right? We stay talking about the ones that are being helped. We rarely talk about the helpers and their state of mind and their mental health and their well-being, because we feel like they have a greater capacity. But that's not necessarily true, right? I'll be the first one to tell you, we cry, right? We hurt. We get bitter, right? And I think that bitterness is one of those things that nobody wants to admit that they have, right? Nobody wants to admit that someone has like penetrated so deeply into me that in the scar is so open and feels so fresh, and it has built a wound, and the wound keeps aching and aching and aching to the point that every time they come to mind, every time I see them, every time I have to interact with them, it's like it just happened, right? It starts to become a personality, right? Bitterness starts to become a personality, but we have to allow it to be demobilized within ourselves. We have to allow it to sink out. We have to allow the bitterness to wane, because that is the only thing causing us to not be effective in that area, is that somebody else did it, and we have a new situation to where it's looking like the same thing. We don't know it to be necessarily, but it looks like the same thing. It feels like the same thing. And so we're going to treat it like the same thing. Therefore, it becomes the same thing, right? Instead of saying, okay, that hurt, I healed, I'm going to take a step back, analyze, and when I go into another situation that looks like that, I'm not going to give it as much as I gave that situation, because it's a reminder. But it's also not necessarily going to influence like this situation right now. And again, giving a disclaimer that doesn't mean do that over and over and over with the same person. That means saying if another situation presents itself, you want to make sure that you're not putting that person's head on another person's shoulder, right? You want to look at that situation for what it is. What is happening to the body during a crisis? here's something that I didn't know until I recently read it. And it literally changed how I do my job, how I started talking to people who are struggling. And when you're in a crisis, your body doesn't necessarily just feel bad emotionally. It goes into actual survival mode, right? And I knew about survival mode, but just the way that it was presented, it kind of like opened up another door. The real physiological changes that happen inside of you, understanding that they can help you understand yourself, right? And the people around you. So when a crisis hits, your sympathetic nervous system activates. The sympathetic nervous system is a hormonal system. It helps you to release different hormones to make your body feel a certain type of way, which in turn connect to other parts of the body that make you act a certain way, right? So this triggers the release of adrenaline and cortisol. Y'all know we talked about cortisol a lot when we were talking about hair loss, the stress hormone, but it takes it into the bloodstream. So adrenaline makes you go, go, go. Cortisol is that fight or flight, that stress hormone that's saying, hey, like, I'm under attack, I need to go. So a lot of people, they go into a state of crisis, and the first thing they do is want to go, 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 but then they're also in a state of panic and fear, and they can't rationalize, right? And so the blood sugar naturally starts to increase. So you have energy to respond. That's the adrenaline. The adrenaline makes you release more blood sugar so that you have almost kind of like a sugar rush. And your pupils start to dilate so you can see more clearly. And your heart rate goes up. And you start to sweat. And you start to pant. And your muscles start to tense. And you are in beast mode. You are literally in beast mode, right? And so it brings a new idea to the conversation, right? About what beast mode actually is. And I'm going to take y'all way, way back to Disney. Beauty and the Beast, right? The Beast, why was he actually a beast? It was because of his bitterness. It was because of his resentment. It was because of his anger. It was because he couldn't see that the way that he was acting was affecting other people. That's why the witch turned him into a beast, because she tested him, asked him for help, and he treated her like she was nothing and nobody, even though he had all the riches and all the glory and all the fame, and he was so well off. Like, he could not be there for the simplest of moments. He did not show her humanity. And he was cursed for that. That curse is bitterness. That curse and bitterness turns you into a beast. And it's not all the way across the board. It's in the areas that it hurts. In the areas that you're looking for vindication. You're looking for solace, when you really just gotta, like, let it go. And that's not an easy thing to do. Letting it go doesn't mean that you forget. Letting it go means that I'm between acting out of fear or choosing an opportunity for me to walk in a new truth, in a new mindset, in a new state of being, right? And so your blood actually decreases from your arms and your legs, and it pools in your trunk and in your head, right? So all the blood rushes into your head and to your vital organs, right? And so let's slow it down a little bit, because everybody knows that's what happens when you get mad, right? The blood is rushing to your head and you're like, going. But let's say this isn't a complex or a devastating crisis. Let's say this is an acute crisis, a small crisis, an ongoing acute crisis. Could that be why you have poor circulation in your legs? Could that be why you have numbness in your arms? Because it's slowly pulling away from your extremities, because you're staying in this crisis mode, you're staying in this fight or flight mode. Is it translating into your personal health? I don't think anybody, I know I didn't think of it you know, as subtle, because crisis is a word that makes us it puts us on the toes, you know? It's like, what happened? But those acute crises are the things that affect our body day in and day out, right? And you're like, oh, well, I need a water pill for that. You probably need to deal with that. You probably need to let it go. Oh, I'm getting frequent migraines. Yeah, because in a state of crisis, your muscles spasm. So your jaws start to clench up. But you thinking it's just like, oh, it's my TMJ. It might be something that you need to deal with and let go. I'm just saying. Like, God really, I'm doing this homework and I'm thinking I'm just in it to, get a degree. And God was really dealing with me, was really working on me. And I think that it's something that everyone should consider, right? And in the same token, right, knowing that this energy and this blood is rushing to your head and your trunk. This is the same thing that I talk to my clients about when we come to hair loss, right? Telogen effluvium. When you're in that state, your body is in survival mode and it's going to make sure your core has maximum nutrition. This is why in those modes you don't experience hair loss, and all those different type of things. But 2 to 3 months later, when your body stabilized, that telogen effluvium we talked about, that's when you start to see the body start to release the hair follicles, because now it doesn't have that extra blood, nutrient-rich blood circulating to the body, circulating to the brain, circulating to the trunk, all your vital organs. Now it's going back where it came from. And when you lose that, it's like, oh, whatever was keeping that alive, whatever was giving you that is no longer there, right? So challenging yourself to stay out of stress mode as much as possible. It's almost like soaking a pot, right? It's stuff stuck on the pot. You done cooked it. It done cooked. Like these young kids say, it done cooked, right? And it's stuck on the walls of the pot. It done burnt a little bit at the bottom. And so we got to start soaking it. We got to put a little, detergent, bleach, whatever you want to do to soak your pot. And we got to let it ease up off. It's not going to be an overnight thing. And then eventually, what you do with the pot. You go, you pour some of it off, see what you can scrub out. Oh, this still there. I got to let it soak a little more, right? I got to get a stronger degreasing agent. I got to get a stronger, chemical to break down this gook, right? And God will reveal that to you along the way. But I'm just saying, some of these things we have not considered. Your body is preparing in fight or flight mode to either fight the threat or run away from it, right? It's an ancient survival mechanism that goes back thousands of years since the beginning of humanity, when humans were dealing with physical predators, mental stress, navigating terrain. And here's the thing, your body doesn't know the difference between a lion or an eviction notice. It sees it as the same thing. A threat is a threat, right? The threat feels the same to your nervous system, whether it's physical or emotional. I'm going to say that again. The threat feels the same to your nervous system, whether it is physical or emotional. And according to research, on stress sociology, this response is actually brilliant when it works the way it's supposed to. It gives you a temporary surge of strength and focus to deal with the immediate threat. But the problem is that most modern crises aren't immediate physical threats that resolve in a few minutes. They're ongoing situations. Financial stress, relationship stress, job loss. The body can't sustain fight or flight mode forever, right? Eventually your body is going to get exhausted. And that exhaustion might show up as fatigue, brain fog, getting sick more often, feeling completely depleted. That's a sign that someone has been in crisis mode for way too long and is heading towards burnout. Okay? So here's something that I actually use in my real work. When people come in experiencing hair loss after a period of time of intense stress, I can explain to them exactly what's happening. And I think that's one of the biggest things. You have to get in front of what's happening. And when your body goes into fight or flight mode, the blood flow is redirected, like we talked about, away from away from your scalp, and the crisis ends. The hair falls out. And so what I'm saying is understanding exactly what's happening, right? Doing a deep dive into, hey, let me wait and see like what just happened. Let me see what the result of that is. Let me look and Google some studies or some research on what my body is feeling so that I can figure out what to do with myself. I can figure out what road to take. And I think sometimes because we ignore the signs and the symptoms, we never get to the root cause of the problem, which isn't physical at all. It's psychological and emotional, and we have some decisions to make.
Why men great till they gotta be great? Don't text me, tell it straight to
Frozen fright. So when we're in these decisions and they're locking us up, it's called frozen fright. And instead of fighting or running, we just freeze. We feel numb, disoriented. They go into a kind of physical or emotional shock, right? Almost like stage fright. Have you ever seen somebody have stage fright and they get up there and they were just like talking to you, right? And then all of a sudden they're totally frozen in time. They can't think, they can't act, they don't know what to do. That's what happens in frozen fright. That's just an example though. According to trauma researchers, this freeze response actually serves a purpose too. It's the body's way of playing dead. And it's kind of funny because I used to have stage fright real bad. And and it's just like, they can see you, right? I mean, we're talking about a really, serious topic, but like, I would stand up there literally frozen, expecting people to like think I was invisible or something. And it's like, they can see you, right? They wait on you to say something. And it's just like, yeah, I know, but I got a decision to make. And one of them is really scary. What if I say something and, people laugh at me, or they're not going to like it, or I say the wrong thing? And then the other one is like, hey, there's this opportunity that I finally realized I have the attention of the audience. I could actually help someone. I could actually say something that would benefit someone. And so I think that courage is the ticket on the bus towards change, on the bus towards opportunity. I think it is the thing that makes you a better person, a stronger person, a more evolved person. Understanding that these physical responses affect you is so important, right? Understanding that they affect other people is so important because it gives us a sense of compassion for ourselves and for others. When someone in a crisis seems irrational and they can't think clearly, or they're making decisions that don't make sense, it's partially because in that frontal cortex, their brain is trying to rationalize at warp speed if they're going to fight, if they're going to run, or if they're going to play dead. Because the brain is in survival mode, and it doesn't open you up to receive information. It opens you up for adaptation. Adaptation to survive, right? So as fast as we can learn to get out of survival mode, the faster we can find solutions. And so as I yield down this conversation, I want to just let you guys know that perception is everything. It's 9/10 of the law, how you see it. There was a study done about a lucky man and an unlucky man. Both were given the exact same environment, circumstances, but researchers observed both of them, and something very fascinating happened. The unlucky man walked past opportunities. He didn't see what was in front of him. He was always looking at his life with the challenges that were there. He focused on all the things that could go wrong. Hyper aware of danger, and the brain literally filtered out everything that looked like a chance or a breakthrough. The lucky man, on the other hand, noticed things that the unlucky man missed. He picked up on opportunities, connections, possibilities, not because more good things were meant to happen to him, but because his mind was seeking solutions. I want you guys to sit with that as we close out this segment today. Is my vantage point seeing the glass half full or half empty? When I feel like I'm in a crisis, do I have the right coping skills to lead me towards opportunity? I think that this conversation is one that could go on for days and days and days and days, for hours and hours and hours, right? And I really want to find a few specialists to have this conversation with you guys sometime this year, because people have to be taught how to think. We have to learn how to think. And so many of us have grown up in survival mode that we weren't able to learn and survive at the same time. So now that the smoke is cleared and the dust is settled, we miss some stuff. And we don't know what those things are until they reveal themselves. And sometimes pride gets in the way. Right? Sometimes bitterness gets in the way. And so I challenge you guys to, one, forgive yourself for helping or hurting. Sometimes we try and help people and they get hurt in the process. Forgive yourself. It's okay. And give yourself room to grow. Remember that your journey is yours uniquely, and beauty starts from within. I'll see you guys next week, St. Pete. This is WBPU-LP St. Petersburg on your FM dial. Stay tuned.
We almost made it all the way through.
Men great till they gotta be great. Don't text me, tell it straight to